I'm interested to see what the downsides are of the child-free life.
What about with no children? What's the misery there?
Welcome to Wife Without Kids, I'm Hannah. This channel is all about building a positive and non-judgmental community to support you in your child-free life.
Modern societies are pretty much in agreement on this score. Having children is one of the most meaningful and delightful moves that anyone can make.
I think it honestly just depends who you are, because I think people who want to be parents agree with that, and people who don't want to be parents probably would not agree with that. But in general, yes, people agree with that sentiment.
Couples who don't, for whatever reason, have children tend to be automatically, almost universally, pitied and are assumed to have been denied the chance to have offspring by biology. That one might freely choose not to have children and yet be reasonably content with one's choice. That remains one of the most disturbing and unfathomed of all modern positions.
He hit the nail on the head with that one. That is so very true. It's hard sometimes for people to understand that there are just people who don't want kids, and they're okay with not having kids, and they don't feel like they're missing out. They're not sad about it. They're not to be pitied. I think when most people think about individuals not having kids, they automatically assume that it's a biology issue and they can't have kids. It's an infertility issue or something of that nature. Sometimes I think it's really hard for people to recognize that some people just don't want kids because they don't want them, yet they still can feel very happy and very fulfilled with the life that they have.
The basic dynamics of whether or not to have children follow the very same pattern that we see across a range of other so-called great choices in emotional life. Whether or not to get married, whether or not to stay faithful, whether to follow the path of reason or the calls of the heart. We observe a very strong desire to try to identify the right choice, accompanied by a frighteningly utopian belief that once this choice has been located, we're going to be able to flourish and find complete peace and happiness.
The funny thing about this, though, is that I think a lot of people don't actually realize that they have a choice to have kids. Because we all grow up with the assumption made, especially if you're a female, that you're just going to have kids. I never grew up with someone looking at me and saying, "So, Hannah, are you going to have kids when you grow up, or are you going to choose to be child-free?" And I think the majority of the people that I've talked to that are child-free say the exact same thing. It's not presented as a choice. It's presented just as you're going to default into parenthood, and then if you pick this other thing, child-freeness, it's seen as being a little strange and like there's something wrong with you. Your life just isn't going to be as joyful and as fun as someone who has children. Life just isn't going to have as much meaning or be as fulfilling as someone who chooses to be a parent.
But the reality is, of course, very different, much darker, but also more interesting. Whatever we choose will, in a sense, be a bit wrong and leave us regretting some features of the choices we didn't make.
I suppose maybe that's true, although I feel like I haven't really had any regrets in my choice to not have kids. There's nothing that I'm like, oh, I really wish I had that experience about having kids, even though I've decided not to have kids. I do think that there are some choices that just don't appeal to people in general. And I mean, I suppose you will be missing out on some of those things, but if they're not things that you initially want, can you really be missing out on them? And then again, I do think there are some people who would enjoy being parents to some degree, but wind up deciding not to. And so they do feel that they are giving up some of the benefits of being a parent in exchange for some of the benefits that come along with being child-free. So I suppose they've weighed the pros and cons in that aspect and said, okay, we'll give up these things to get this instead.
There is no such thing as a cost-free choice. A line of argument which continues, oddly, to create surprise in contemporary life. Making a good choice simply involves focusing on what variety of suffering we're best suited to, rather than aiming with some sort of utopian zeal to try to avoid grief and regret altogether.
Well, there's a pessimistic viewpoint. No, I've just never thought of it in those terms, but I suppose, yeah, pick your suffering, I guess. I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of suffering in child-free life, but that's just me. Do you guys think this is a suffering life?
The very same kind of trade-offs exist over the question of children. No honest experience of parenting is complete without an intermittent, very strong impression that in some ways children are both the meaning of one's life and the cause of the ruin of one's life.
Now there's some truth. I mean, it sounds kind of harsh, but I do actually think that that is the reality of parenthood I'm not a parent, but from what I've observed, it's not all perfect and romantic. It's actually some hardship mixed in with that. Because most people choose to be parents, I think that they are okay with the hardships that come along with being a parent. Although sometimes people make the choice to be a parent and maybe haven't thought through the hardships. I don't totally know. But I think this is a very realistic way to sort of express this. It's going to come with some really tough stuff that you might not even know is going to happen.
On the one hand, children, the misery. Disappointment with oneself as a parent. Disappointment with how they turn out. Guilt, exhaustion, lost opportunity. A sense of perpetuating human suffering. The house sticky everywhere.
I could not handle that. I can't even handle a little tuft of cat fur floating down our hallway. I don't even know how I could handle sticky messes the kids make. I think it would drive me absolutely crazy. I'm interested to see what the downsides are of the child-free life.
What about with no children? What's the misery there? Society's constant message that one's missed out.
It is true. Society constantly tells you that you're missing out. I don't feel that at all, but you do hear it a lot.
Loneliness and boredom.
No, I do not feel lonely and I do not feel bored. I love the quiet. I feel like there's this huge assumption that every elderly person is lonely, and I just don't think that that's true. I do think some of them are lonely, but if you're already used to kind of a quiet life that doesn't involve kids, when you're an older person, aren't you just going to be experiencing what you already wanted? A life that's more quiet and doesn't have children?
A lack of constant distraction and calls on one's time.
Lack of constant distraction is seen as being a misery? I don't think that's a misery at all.
And a sentimental longing for comfort of children by the time one reaches the nursing home.
Okay, I have to say this. Come on, people. Why is the nursing home theme always attached to someone who doesn't have kids? There are so many people in nursing homes that have kids. I think that should be part of the children's section as well. The fact that children abandon parents, the fact that children don't take care of parents, the fact that parents and kids just don't get along. This assumes that every older person is going to wind up in a nursing home, which isn't true. I mean, some of them do, but some people live in their own homes basically until the day they go. And this also assumes that there's going to be a longing in your heart when you're an older person for children. Not everyone is necessarily going to long for children. If I enjoy a lot of alone time and I enjoy the way that life is right now, child-free, and everything that comes with it, including the fact that I may have less people in my life than someone who's a parent, and I'm totally okay with that, how can that suddenly change when I'm an older person? You're still going to have people around you.
The insight that all choices are, in a sense, a bit hellish was best expressed by the early 19th century Danish existential philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, who summed up our options in a playful but bleakly realistic and exasperated outburst in his masterpiece, Either Or. Marry and you will regret it. Don't marry, you will also regret it. Marry or don't marry, you will regret it either way.
This is a little bit pessimistic, a little dreary.
Believe a woman, you'll regret it. Believe her not, you'll also regret it. Hang yourself, you'll regret it. Don't hang yourself, you'll regret that too. Hang yourself or don't hang yourself, you'll regret it either way. Whether you hang yourself or don't hang yourself, you'll regret both. This, gentleman, is the essence of all philosophy.
Oh my, he seems interesting and interesting. I think that's all I'm going to say about that. I do not think about life in those terms specifically, but he's a philosopher, so he's just going to have a different take on things. I mean, I do think there's a positive and a negative to everything, and I suppose everybody has regrets at some point in their life.
We deserve pity, as does everyone else. We're going to make disastrous decisions, we'll form mistaken relationships, we'll embark on misguided careers, we'll invest our savings foolishly, we'll spend years on friendships with unreliable idiots, and we'll get it mostly wrong around children. But we can be consoled by a bitter truth. There aren't painless options, because the conditions of existence are intrinsically, rather than accidentally, frustrating.
It's true. We're going to make some really big mess ups and we're going to have to learn from them. I think that's just kind of part of being a human being. But sometimes I find the people who have messed up the most, if you choose to learn from your mistakes, can actually gain the most in life because you learn what not to do or you learn a better way to do something. Now, obviously, with something like having kids, if you've had kids and then you decide you don't want them, not really a whole lot you can do.
For those of us contemplating whether or not to have children, the message is dark but consoling in its bleakness. You will be at points very unhappy, whatever you choose. With either option, you will feel that you've ruined your life, and you'll be correct.
I'm sorry, I just can't with this. It's so dramatic. Like, I don't feel like I've ruined my life at all. I don't think most parents think they ruin their life at all. But I don't know. I know he's trying to be serious. I'm just having a hard time taking this seriously because it's so extreme.
There is, curiously, relief to be found in the knowledge of the inevitability of suffering. It is, in the end, never darkness that dooms us, but the wrong sort of hope in that most cruel of fantasies. The right choice.
I also think that your attitude has a lot to do with it. You can just be the most miserable person and never learn from anything or enjoy anything in life, even though you have an amazing life. Or you can, try to be someone that makes the right choice, and if you mess up, just learn from it and carry on. And I think attitude towards life probably has a lot to do with how life will turn out for you. Check out this video right here to see some of the benefits of choosing the child-free life. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you are never alone, and I will see you next week.